Hello guys, welcome back to Dharma Geosphere. At the outset, thanks for all the very good response to my earlier videos. I'll be sending the replies to the emails which you all have sent. Today I'll be interacting with you on two very important, outstanding geographers who have taken geography to a totally different level. One is Bernard Varenius and the other is the Immanuel Kant. So between both of these two excellent geographers, there was also an intervening period of the impact of the age of explorations, and then in this period there were nearly about 12 geographers, particularly in the field of physical geography, who made some very notable contributions. So, about Bernard Varenius, maybe you are all aware that his book Geographia Generalis has been one of the most popular, not only during his times but also till today, and for more than a century it was the standard textbook for the geography students. But before writing the Geographia Generalis, he also wrote another book before this. Soon after he finished his studies in medicine, he wrote about the Kingdom of Japan, wherein he also included Siamese, the present day Thailand. So that book also is still being referred to understand the history and functioning of Japan during those times. So one of the main contributions of Varenius was that he divided geography into particular geography and general geography. The particular geography was related to a particular region or a place, in-depth study of that place, whereas the general geography was more about understanding one particular theme spread all over the globe in order to make unifying laws and policies across the various regions. And then this later on finally turned into what we now know as the regional geography and the systematic geography. So his contribution at the time when the society was still not very clear of where to keep geography as a discipline, Varenius had come up with this very clear distinction of the two geographies. So that's how Varenius is very important as far as the contribution of geography is concerned. And then we go on to Immanuel Kant. He also divided geography into one that is logical and the other is physical. So one of the important contributions of Immanuel Kant at that time was he universalized the study of geography as a science, and he also brought in the aspects of the correlation between history and geography. He felt that there cannot be geography without history, and there cannot be history without geography. So he said all that which are the phenomena which are related to one after the other, or what is called as in a chronological order, is the subject matter of history, whereas that which is studied side by side of each other is chorology or the study of geography. He named them as Nishiander and Nebeniander, and this is how he related geography and history together. And so apart from Varenius and Kant, I have already said that there are some very important geographers. The first of them was William Whitson, who said that the Earth was formed out of the debris of the comet, and before this was the most famous Haley, Edmund Haley, whom you all know, because he identified the orbit of the comet, and that comet was named after him. Then apart from this, he was also one of the first to map the magnetic variations across the globe, and he is also credited for bringing in together in a very organized and orderly fashion the various complex data that was brought in by the various explorers. So apart from this, we also have Gottlieb Werner, who said that the great flood that had occurred because of the atmosphere. And then you had John Strachey, who said that the landforms we see on the surface actually are a reflection of what we see below the landform, that is the rock structure. And after this, we had one of the most popular geologist and geographer, the James Hutton. You all may have heard about the theory of uniformitarianism, which basically means that all the geological processes that took place during the geological history was part of a continuous but a very uniform process. At that time, uniformitarianism was not that popular or accepted when he had proposed, because he was well way ahead of those times. But it was Chris Lell who took forward this concept of uniformitarianism and then gave examples and evidences that actually that is how he exists. So James Hutton during his times identified a great angular unconformity. Unconformity, you all know, that is a surface which separates two unequal composition blocks or rocks, or it could be of different ages or different rock types which occur with different strike and dip. So he found this angular unconformity, and he made the statement that the rocks which are lying below the unconformity could not have formed during the rocks which have been seen above. So he said there is a very long history of weathering, erosion, deposition, and finally laying of those rocks in that particular direction. So during this observation of this from the angular unconformity, he made that famous statement that no vestige to an end, and no prospect of a beginning. So this is a very important quote. He also said that present is key to the past. So these three concepts of James Hutton, you please remember. One is the uniformitarianism, the other is the present is key to the past, and no vestige to a beginning, no prospect to an end. These three are very, very important as far as the James Hutton is concerned. After this, we had Comte Buffon, who identified the climate changes, and he said because of the climate changes, species move from their place of their origin to different places owing to climate change. He also said that the warmth of the earth which we see on the earth's surface has come because of the heat from the earth's surface. Then we come to Bodin, is a famous theory of various climate zones, and we also have Abu Bos, who's related very interestingly the weather with the suicide rates in Paris and Rome. The twin cities, or the tale of two cities, which we heard from Charles Dickens. And then Montesquieu, he explained how some climates are superior to others. He said those who are living in hot climates are hot-blooded and short-tempered. Those who are living in icy or very cold regions are stiff and cold, whereas those who are living in and around Europe are the most ideal climate conditions, and that's how the thinking and intellectual capacity flourished much better in those climatic conditions. Then you have James Rennie. You all may be knowing that he was the first Surveyor General of East Bengal, and he was the one who produced the first survey map of East Bengal, and then he went on to make further maps on India, which we will discuss in the slides. And he was also known to be one of the first to have identified the oceanography and coined the term oceanography. And of course, then you have Malthus, who said that while the food supply moves in arithmetic progression, the population moves in geometric progression. So we'll also understand Malthus when we learn more about the population geography and various theories. And you have this Conrad Malte Brunn, who wrote an encyclopedia of what is called as the Geography Universalis. But here is one person you should remember, that he was totally against this climate determinism. He said man had much more abilities to adapt and change the environment and dictate how we can live and how we can survive in adverse climatic conditions. So he was the one who was against this climate determinism. So these 12 geographers, please remember, and then about what they have contributed, because this is the period where we understand the impact of the geographic explorations. So you should be able to relate one with the other and quote these geographers and their contribution in your answers to fetch that extra mark. So after this, I'll just be showing you some of the slides, and then we will move on to the next chapter or the next topic, one of the most important, that is of contributions from Humboldt and Ritter. So here is Varenius. As I said, he produced Geographia Generalis, which stood firm for more than a century as the standard treatise on systematic geography. But before this, he wrote what was called as Descriptio Regina Japoniae, that is the description about Japan. Then, as I said, he clearly distinguished between two forms of geographical scholarship, the one on the particular places and the other on special or particular geography and the general geography. So, but one thing you should remember, that though some of the authors like Majid Hussain and a few other Indian authors have written that at that time dichotomy existed, and probably Varenius, while giving his two divisions of geography, also thought that there was dichotomy in geography. But clearly, if you read R.D. Dixit, who also quotes, unlike the others, has given authentic information that Varenius did not at all suggest that there was a dichotomy or a separation of ways in geography. In fact, to him, the two represented mutually interdependent parts of geography as a unified field of scientific learning. So in this broad vision of geography, Varenius was far ahead of his peers, who thought probably there was this dualism and dichotomy existing, or physical geography is different from human geography and all that. But the vision of Varenius was very clear, which has been very clearly brought out in R.D. Dixit books, that it was interdependent and it was unifying and they were together. So this also probably explains why he so greatly influenced the concept and scope of geography in Europe for nearly a century. So unless he had this convincing arguments about how both the geographies, physical and human geography, or systematic and regional geography, were interdependent and partly part of the same geography as a whole, were not convincing, his thoughts would not have held for being as correct for such a long time. And then the impact of discoveries, you know that it had impacted the science, so naturally to the geography as well. So these explorations marked the beginning of also the European supremacy, European navigational skills over the rest of the world, and it also brought in major progress in science and consequently to geography, because the knowledge of lands and oceans not only become more vivid but also became very accurate. And many of the new and plant and animal species were also discovered. All this directly and indirectly contributed to the development of geography. And the intellectual thinking at that time, in spite of Varenius and Immanuel Kant so eloquently and so vividly bringing in the geographical concept, there remained this myth and belief that probably that the earth, the physical phenomena associated with the earth has acquired its present form because of some divine intervention or because of a divine creation. But all this so-called theological or divine creation, physiological process of the earth were put to rest by some very inspired theories, as I've told you in the overview of the lecture, about the 12 geographers who made the difference, who brought in inspired theories to show that it is the physical process and only the physical process that has brought in the size and shape of the earth as we see today. So the first was Edmund Haley, and then Edmund Haley I'll be talking, I've already said what are the three main contributions. Then we have this William Whiston, who developed the theory that the earth was made of the debris from the comet, and then Gottlob Werner, who developed the theory that the Great Flood has been caused by the cooling of the Earth's atmosphere. And then John Strachey, who said that the overlying landforms actually reflect the structure of the rocks below. And this is Edmund Haley, the great scientific genius. As I said, he had this knack of bringing in orderly and systematic and an organized way of very complex data that was made available from the explorations. And he also contributed to the first map of magnetic variations, as you can see there, using isogonic lines. And then the James Hutton. James Hutton, please do not forget, say favorite short question. It need not be directly from about James Hutton, but it could be any of the quotes like no vestige of a beginning and no prospect of an end. So as I said, here is the sedimentary rocks. You can see the unconformity there. There are two different type of rock formations. So if he thought that these two sedimentary rocks implies a very significant period of time between deposition, uplift, tilting and subsequent deposition of another layer, new layer of rocks, this could have happened only in a very long and slow process. Otherwise it's difficult to describe the thickness of the underlying rocks. So he, based on his observation, he concluded that our present inquiry is that we find no vestige of a beginning, no prospect of an end. And then this is the uniformitarianism, based on the observations of uplift, sedimentation and erosion. He wrote the theory of the earth. It's a kind of an encyclopedia, it's the touchstone for all that is related to the physical process of the earth. He concluded that the age of the earth was essentially infinite. Again, no vestige of a beginning, no prospect of an end. Then the scientific classification of plant and animal life was brought in by the Carolus Linnaeus, also influenced geographical thought to a very large extent. As you can see, like how the man has been evolving, so were the landforms evolving from mountains to marshes to waterfalls to plains to plateaus. Then Comte de Buffon, he was the first to focus on man as an agent of geographic change. He developed the idea that the earth was cooling gradually on the surface, and that part of the warmth of the earth's surface as we see today is derived entirely from the earth's interior. And then he also described, as I said, the climatic determinism, how the species moved from their center of origin to different places owing to climate change. And then the Bowden's theory on climate zones, he divided into southern parts which are religious by nature, and the northern parts which are influenced by Mars, they have material characteristics. And then the middle regions, or the Jupiter, were able to evolve a much more civilized life. And then we come to Abedi Bose, who said the weather and suicide rates, there is a kind of an interrelationship. He said in Paris, suicides were most common in the period before the onset of winter, and in Rome, on the other hand, most suicides had occurred in the two hottest months in summer. Then we had Major James Rennie, who was the founder of science of oceanography, and also he served as the Surveyor General of India during 1767 and 1777. His Atlas of Bengal has gone through several iterations, and it has stood this test of time, and even now it is a part of the library in India. Then you had Robert Malthus. Most of you may be aware about this. I brought in the interdependent relationship between increasing in population and food supply. As you can see in the graph, the population increases in geometrical progression, whereas the food supply or the natural goods, they increase only in arithmetic progression. Then you have Conrad Malte-Brun. He was against the climatic determinism. He brought in a book from the information of various voyages, including that of the Captain Cook, and is called as the Geography Universelle. Of course, Immanuel Kant, as I have already said, one of the greatest scientists and proponent of geographic studies as chorological science. So that is all in the slides part of Varenius and Immanuel Kant. Please do remember just not their names but their contributions. So chronologically we'll be going further and seeing Humboldt and Karl Ritter in our next session. So stay tuned. I'm happy that some of you are doing very well in the perspectives in human geography. I can gauge by the kind of questions you have been sending me. So keep them coming, and that will be a good interaction between me and you. And we'll go cracking on these perspectives in human geography. Rest, of course, the physical geography and the other parts of geography, most of that we have covered, but I'll be bringing in videos of all. So stay tuned, stay safe, and study well, keep focused, and all the best, and bye.